Alright, so I'm going to show Barrier Island and how I've gone about creating a city on Barrier Island. And I think the best way to show that to start before I kind of load the save file is really looking at the geography of it. So this is how Barrier Island is described in the game. The long chain of barrier islands has huge potential for prime real estate right from the start. So you kind of see that with the mini map, that there's a lot of space early on. You start off on that southwest bigger island, kind of in the mini map there. Highway and railway tracks follow the coastline on the mainland. So again, if you kind of zoom in a little bit with the mini map, you see that it is kind of on the south side of the mainland, which is separated from the islands by a large bay. An existing shipping lane runs across the bay and connects to the open ocean. It is a North American theme. It's based on, seems like it's based on Long Island, New York, and also Southern Connecticut. It's not exactly the same, but it seems like it's kind of based on that. I've changed the climate from Celsius to Fahrenheit in the game, so it shows up with a, reasonable climate. Latitude being southern hemisphere is actually kind of funny because it's a North American themed map. Buildable area 41% is pretty solid. There are outside connections of every type. And also, various natural resources, mostly forest, as you can kind of see here. There's a bit of ore and oil, and fertile land, which can be crops and whatnot. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to load the latest. So I'm going to go ahead and pause to show the city. So I'm going to pause to show the city. There are 3 game speeds. I generally play on the second game speed. I was actually going to do something here, but to kind of give the big layout look, this is my city at 46,184 people, making some good money, 15.7 million. I can buy tons of squares. I can still buy 54 squares. I've already bought like 60 something, I think. In terms of progression, I have bought quite a few things, all the way up to freeway intersections, which I haven't really done a lot with, but I do a little bit. I'll show some roundabouts, an attempt at a highway. I put a few parking areas as well. I started out primarily using gas power plants, but I've now since switched to solar power plants. Mainly because there is an achievement involved with solar. The budget. Yes, I can certainly show the budget. So, this is my budget at the moment. I guess I can share income and expenses. I think there was a better way to show this. But currently I'm making about 5.5 million. I've not done a lot with residential or commercial tax. But most of it is tax revenues. Some electricity fees, some water fees, and education fees. But in terms of expenses, I'm really looking at a lot of service upkeeps for the most part. But you can see 5.5 is generally my revenues. I'm now at 4.5 with expenses. The arrow, I'm currently making 25,000 per hour. So it is going pretty smoothly. So here's what it looks like, the breakdown. Taxes and service fees definitely outpacing expenses. So, I mean, it shows the breakdown here, but I kind of showed the graph already for that. I haven't done much in the way of taxation. There is a possibility I could raise it, say, like 12%, and it's probably okay. Haven't really done that. Kind of breakdown on service costs. Primarily electricity, healthcare and death care. Garbage management has been pretty pricey. Education, research, Parks and Rec. I haven't been doing a whole lot of specific... Hello there. I'm showing my city that I'm now 46,000 into, and just kind of showing what I've built. So basically the starting square is here, and I've really started to build out all the way across, and I'll kind of show specific things, but kind of to recap from the beginning, I started by building here. This, I ended up ultimately building a freeway, but that wasn't the case initially. When I started, I kind of had residential here. I had mixed use commercial, meaning that you know, I basically have built a city on a grid. So basically where my medium-sized roads are, I ended up building something a little more substantial. I would have commercial kind of in these corners and whatnot. I guess I'll show my current. So this was an industrial area for me at the beginning, until I realized that the air pollution goes a certain way. As you can see with the arrows, they kind of go this way. When I realized that, I shifted it all, and it's ultimately over here now. This is all industrial. Ended up putting solar up in a previously industrial area there. But that was kind of how I started building. And then I eventually built out more and more. Towards the west, industrial became kind of this area on the southeast side, and then I eventually built further. But really, initially, what I was trying to do is build westward. Zoning. I've not really been presenting a whole lot, but I guess this is one way to kind of look at it is in these particular areas with the green, you can kind of see next to the roads where my residential has been. So I have residential basically all across the map, except for the southwest corner, which I later eventually more recently built into industrial because it's kind of separated out from everything else. I have kind of low density basically all over the map. So you can see these little houses. In some other areas like these areas, these are mixed use areas. So I have specific corners where I have these mixed use buildings. So it's the mixed housing with the apartment buildings, with commercial space on the bottom, apartments on the top. Otherwise, I was putting a lot of these low density housing, single and semi-detached houses. I basically put this on a grid for the most part. I think this kind of grid works pretty well for a lot of things. I basically have these roundabouts at these intersections, and that is just a little bit of a habit I have from City Skylines 1, where traffic flow is was a really big deal in that game. I think they really toned it down quite a bit in Cities Skylines 2, but it's kind of a habit I have in putting those in. I do have some medium density row housing every now and then, and basically once I built across the bay, I did put some of these in areas like here. There's a little bit of low rent housing I put every now and then, and high density, but not a whole lot of that. Commercial zones, these are where my commercial zones are. Like I say, A lot of that is in these corners, which are really the high density business, which really serves as entertainment for others as well. Which green ones to put down? So I really look at the city information here on the side with demand. So if you look at the bottom left, it says bars basically indicate which types of zones are currently needed in your city. Longer the bar, the higher the need for the particular zone. I've been primarily focused on doing that. I think the commercial demand bar is a little broken at this point because I just have them everywhere and they still do that. But low density is something that the game really seems to push. So I really start by building low density and then I build up. So medium density, and I end up building it up. So that goes from low to medium. And that's one way for me to not build any more roads as I'm expanding, at least for a little while. So commercial, I have, as you can see, I have a lot of these mixed use areas. These areas really all around for the most part are a mix of high density and the low density business. Industrial is really, I think, a lot based on, if you're doing normal industrial, the big thing you really want to have is knowledge of where the air pollution is going on your particular map. In Barrier Islands, it is really going south, and as you can see on the other side, kind of going southeast a bit. So that is why I put industrial kind of on the side, and I actually have nothing in this area because of air pollution. Ground pollution can take a long time to get out of the way. For example, I don't have anything here, but the ground pollution is still there. It takes a long time to get rid of. The ground pollution below the solar panels here is because I used to have industrial in this area. Office zones, I don't think it matters too much in terms of zoning, but I have them kind of just around town, and I've just gone from low density all the way to high density to save some space. So you can see some skyscrapers in various parts of the city. Electric. It's actually funny, it's showing no electric availability. That's clearly not correct. But my main electricity is currently coming out of two areas specifically. I have two solar power plants that I currently have. But they were originally a bunch of these small coal power plants. I was realizing the upkeep on the gas power plant was just a little much. And once I got to the point of being able to use progression in order to claim all the way up to solar power plant, I just ended up doing that. So I have solar, and I have quite a bit of that, and I need to export some of that as well. You also notice I do still have some plants kind of up in the north here across the bay that I've built out to, which, I mean, as long as you connect the lines, that's fine. You may not even need to do that. I also have these incineration plants, which don't really, the primary purpose isn't to build out for electricity, but the advantage of these plants is that you're able to generate some while you're burning garbage. Water and sewage, again, I'm not sure why it's showing up with no availability. Maybe I need to unpause it and it'll show it. There we go. So electric, my electric was at 387. I got to export some of that because there's so much of it.
You're listening to Secondary Radio with J. Thomas Honda.
Let me go ahead and turn off these.
Classical music on the air. Keep that dial right here.
Okay, anyway.
A housing shortage is driving up prices in the area.
I think I'm going to briefly turn off ads.
Welcome, Professor. So a housing shortage is bad for people trying to move here, right?
Humans are programmed to desire certain representations within ideological restaurants, which are entirely apart from the actual rewards in product. For example, consider government.
One final question, Professor. Is the housing shortage going to make me richer?
By certain motivates, perhaps yes, in the short term.
I like the sound of
But
that.
what we are discussing is the study of a statistical abstraction and its effect on the human.
Thank you, Professor.
It is a question of priority.
Industry in the region is all.
I think I turned off ads, but whatever. I'm going to see if I can just talk over the ads.
There's no sinking this boat, Glenda.
Okay, so water and sewage. I've connected it and exported it out through this. I have a line a sewer and water that goes out of the map. This is the edge of the map. So I'm able to actually get it, get that export out of 85,000 a month. Water and sewage, you definitely want to make sure, like electricity, you have enough of it. This is basically the sea, so there's not an issue of upstream, downstream, where your sewers, pollute your people as much. But what I do have is I have these water pumping stations off on one side, and I even kind of do the same with a sewer one on the other side. But I have sewer plants that are kind of on this side. These are sewer. Specifically, I built out the sewage outlets, so they're in a different part. So you will see, based on the red water, that's where my sewage has come out in the past. And the water is coming in from this side. So it's a C map, so it's not as big of a deal. Have them, one being upstream, and one being downstream. But healthcare, what I've basically done with that is I've just had medical clinics around. I have a few. I have one over here. And I just have them separate out a little bit so there's coverage. So I have 3 of them. Over here, 4. I may have put another one somewhere. 1, 2. Don't really recall. Death care is really just I put basically a crematorium here and over there, and I have a cemetery over here. You don't really need to build a whole lot of those, and you're generally okay. But you do need a few. Garbage management has been a little challenging for me. So you can see that in certain spots. I've been using landfills over here. These are landfills. And then I have these incineration plants. Again, generally not as much of a big deal for these, but you still want to make sure your garbage is collected, because when you're looking at happiness on the right here, poor garbage services -2, it can hurt for sure. My happiness levels are generally pretty good. I have it at the 5 out of 5, with people feeling like, oh, wealth is good, spacious homes, reliable mail service, abundance of entertainment, abundance of leisure time, reliable internet service. High crime is a bit of a challenge, and I'll show that in a little bit. There's also garbage services, healthcare coverage, traffic. Going to education. Education is kind of important for trying to get people educated and really bringing in money, I feel. I have elementary schools in various spots. So for example, I have a high school here, I have an elementary school over there, but I have schools really just kind of around all over the place. I really separated them out so that there's a lot of coverage. I even put one of the elementary schools up on the north side. So good education generally. 33.4% educated. When you combine it with those that are higher, it is basically about 46%, and I kind of want to bring that up even more. There's some high schools. I put some colleges around as well. They're a little bigger, they're a little more expensive, so I have only put a few around. And then I have a university over here, and I'm looking to build one more on the other side that I just built. Fire services, I have 3 across the city. Fire hazard is a little high, but hasn't really damaged anything at all. So but down the road, I probably want to build another fire house over on the other side, so that there's coverage on that side. Police, crime probability is something that, even though the crime probability of 33% is actually lower than the fire hazard of 53%, people are still annoyed, still the -5. The ways you would basically try to solve that are using a police station, police headquarters. I've upgraded my police stations, actually, so that they actually have the upgrade for more police vehicles, and I think it's just a matter of coverage. The other way to fix that is using low rent housing. That would be another way to lower crime rate. Not necessarily cheap to build up at the beginning, but certainly becomes easier as you go. Transit is actually a very interesting thing. Right now, what I basically have is I have a bunch of bus stop signs, as you can see. These are bus stop signs. So they're kind of all over in various spots. And it's doing pretty well. Look at this. I've had, pretty solid public transport. 15,715 citizens making use of it per month. And I will go ahead and show exactly these lines because I think they're pretty neat. So, one line I do is basically this loop here. Is a pretty short loop, and as you can see, my stops are basically close to some big things, like big commercial or apartment buildings. I will have them at or very near them. So this seems like a pretty successful line. With 272 passengers, 85% usage. The second line is actually even has more people, but it spans a further distance, so the percentage is a little lower. I do a little bit of a loop over here. Again, get close to the high density areas so that it's covered. Although this one actually doesn't connect with the other line exactly. And then my third line is over here on the southeast side, and you will see there is actually a little bit of overlap with the other line. But it basically wraps around where the university is on this side, goes through a little bit of the industrial area, and goes by various commercial and so there's some housing and apartment complexes and commercial, and some skyscrapers as well on this side. And then on the final one, I've got a loop on the northeast side, which goes through what was the downtown district at the beginning, and again loops by office areas like these skyscrapers, goes by some other little, commercial areas as well. This is more of a commercial district line. I have some parks here and there. They're mostly small parks. The big things I've got are the botanical garden here, which is quite expensive, $160,000 a month, but increases outdoor recreation by 100, attractiveness 157, so it's a very popular building. And then the other one I've got is this Grand Hotel plus 75 indoor recreation. Yeah, my lines don't generally cross over a central point, at least as of right now. But I know that with the bus lines being so popular at this moment, I probably could have more lines. That'd be okay. Certainly, if there's more traffic, if there are more lines in one spot, there's just more people there. But keeping in mind that buses really don't have the same impact on traffic. You know, if people are taking the bus, they're not taking cars, and so that can be a helpful thing potentially on roads. Post offices, I have a few of them. Post office over here. There's some various areas where there are mailboxes around. But post office, I guess I need to get a little bit more availability and put another post office somewhere, or a post sorting facility. But this, for the most part, still covers the mail, and they're pretty happy. A reliable mail service, plus 7%, or plus 7 points, rather. I've done some landscaping. I have some trees all across the map. I haven't done a whole lot of actual landscaping, other than putting vegetation in areas. I already showed the budget. I already showed the transportation overview. And looking at city, I guess I'll show these things as well. Traffic flow. I have some parking facilities in various places. Primarily what was the downtown area, I have some parking, and people actually do use these things. So 17 to 41 here, 3 to 41, I probably want to start moving that one because traffic has gone down from that parking area. I put one next to this high density housing area, which is being used because of the high density of those that apartment complex. So I do make use of a little bit of parking, which is a helpful thing. Traffic flow has been generally stuck at 60% for the most part, basically since I started. The main issue is eventually I need to figure out how to deal with all the highway traffic, all the trucks that are coming into town, and eventually I need to do something with that. An initial idea I had, because of City Skylines 1, was trying to build a freeway here. So you can see that there's a freeway interchange here, freeway interchange there. I never ended up ultimately making a freeway, but I have connected by creating this bridge, basically a few freeway intersections on the other side as I build over to what is effectively the Connecticut side over there. Already showed electricity, doing pretty well with getting everything connected. Water, same thing. Water connection, I have a line that brings my water and sewer all the way up to the northern part, across the sea. Healthcare, death care, again, most of the city's covered. This part is actually, since it's mostly industrial, I don't think it's as big of a deal. Garbage processing, I showed before. Fire and rescue. Disaster control is something I'm going to have to put some shelters in, but they're generally fairly cheap. And you don't really need a whole lot of them anyway. Police administration, I have a welfare office here. Having welfare offices can increase well-being in the surrounding neighborhood and also actually bring crime down.
Has been issued for the immediate area due to poor road conditions. Please exercise caution if you must drive, and try to stay off the streets until conditions improve. This has been a local public service announcement.
You're listening to Second Moon, the epitome of classical listening at home or wherever you are. And on to our main feature story.
I swear it took off like ads, and here they are.
More high-end stores, bringing the latest in luxury to our neighborhood. You can now shop for designer shoes while sipping a fancy local Jarva mocktail. Or so my wife tells me. That's good for business and good for the community.
Thanks, Jim. We'll be back after.
So, tourism.
We're live, and we're getting reports about a traffic accident somewhere in the city.
Road maintenance services have already been dispatched, and traffic flow should return to normal. But if you're planning a quick trip out, you might want to wait a little while until everything clears up.
If you're in it, you already know about it. No use reminding you. Meanwhile, expect delays and drive safe.
So my tourism really comes from signature buildings, because the Botanical Garden is a signature building, or not a signature building, a what was it? One of the monuments. But the monuments seem to be getting a lot of tourism in the city. There is a trophy or a Steam achievement if you get all the way up to 90 for city attractiveness. So I guess these two areas have really gotten a lot of attention. And if I build more of those things, these are the landmarks rather. I built a grand hotel and I built a botanical garden, and they're bringing in a lot of tourists, which is good. It's a good thing. Outside connections is kind of interesting in this area. Exporting a lot of software, media, telecom, which makes sense given the offices, the office space I have here. Importing food, livestock, timber. Now there is a lot of wood on this side of the map, which I haven't really made use of yet, but in terms of industrial, this is certainly a good resource of lumber on this map. I'll show the other ones as I kind of keep going through. But basically, this is a city, and we're importing agricultural type things from other cities. Okay, again, quickly showing the residential, commercial, industrial, basically being on the southern part because of air flows, and the office. Building levels are definitely starting to move up in residential and commercial areas, primarily residential, which have been built all the way up to 45.6% for level 3, industrial as well. Commercial and office buildings are a little newer. They haven't been built up as much at this point. Land values, as you might expect, are going to be lower in the industrial area, where it's a little more, where it's lower. Well, I should say it's a little higher, rather, in certain areas around apartment complexes, industrial, and really even around the university a little bit. With building land values, interestingly being kind of low in a few areas, but otherwise but building land values kind of, actually that's kind of interesting. I hadn't looked at that menu a whole lot of times, but it is actually a little more even than I would have imagined. Company profitability, just a range here. Some are doing really well, some are not, as is the nature of businesses. But look at the average office profit. It is pretty solid, 98%. Commercial profit, 96%. My plans for expanding this city even more is I am gonna, in terms of residential, I'm going to be building out on this side, because while there's a lot of potential lumber, I've still got a lot of room I can build over here. In terms of industry, one possibility again is making use of all this lumber on this side. There are also a few other interesting places, natural resources, so that's actually a good place to go. This apparently is a good farming spot. There's all this lumber here to make use of. If I ever want to do some fertile, make use of fertile land to grow something, I can always, build something out in these areas as well. I probably won't make too much out of it because, again, with the airflow, it's kind of on the northern side of town, and I'm able to export a lot of that anyway. Now, interestingly, is this little corner here, where I very well may make this area kind of an oil area because it's already kind of south on the south side for airflow, and this stretch in particular is going to be really easy to make into oil industry. They're already kind of separated out from the rest with this university over here. So that's probably going to be a likely expansion spot for oil. I just need to make sure that, since that is currently low density housing, that I build out in this vicinity so that I have room to actually to make use of the oil here. There's oil up here as well. There's some groundwater deposits up north. This area over, not showing very well, but there is some water in this vicinity as well that I've not really made use of. There's some groundwater I could use. However, I may not need to use it at all because of the fact that I'm surrounded by sea anyway. I have freshwater supply in many places, but there are some other places out in this area that I can even make use of as I kind of expand to make use of those industries. Again, oil being another one I could actually make use of over here, but I have not had really, I've never really done a whole lot of specialized industry at this point. Population doing pretty well. Birth rate going up well above the death rate. Moving in way ahead of moving away. Lots of good jobs. Unemployment 0.2%. That really comes, I think, from the fact that it's a good place to live. You know, I have carefully expanded the city so that it is pretty well zoned. The roads are, it's pretty much a grid for the most part until I get to the coasts. And if I need to tear something down to make use of something, I'm always able to, but it's a pretty good grid where I can, it's a very straightforward layout on a map that is fairly barren, and you can very much take advantage of that. Population, as you might expect, mostly adults that move in, you know, with buildings that are just going to go up and up. That's kind of how it goes. And for that reason, I'm starting to build out here so I can kind of distribute it on the other side. People are pretty happy for the most part. People are pretty wealthy for the most part, as you can see from many of the green buildings. The one issue with that is low-income housing. I gotta put more low-income housing in. And if you kind of look down and actually look to see what the issues are, right now, for example, ground pollution. This is just because I had electric here. I had a gas station, the gas stations over there. There are some places that are high rent, not just in industrial areas, but also in in residential areas as well. In terms of garbage, I got to put out a little bit more garbage, but the high rent means I essentially need to put out a lot more low-income housing. But that's pretty much the issue you see basically everywhere, is people have gotten pretty well off. So a few people are kind of left in the dust right now in terms of wealth, and so I need to put in more low-income housing. Workplaces, I mean, everyone's basically employed, so it's doing really well. And as I end up growing the city more and more, and probably putting in more colleges and universities, that number is just going to get higher in terms of education. Air pollution, very much tied to the fringes over here in the south and the southeast. Ground pollution is really linked to my industrial areas as well as my electric and waste areas. I had these coal power plants earlier, so that's why there's ground pollution on this side, and I had one here and here as well, and they will eventually clear up at some point. My hope is eventually I can make use of this area to build more residential, and kind of push some of this stuff over here all the way down to the southeast. But right now I'm waiting to make my move. Noise pollution, as you might expect, is really where the roads are and where the populations are, but there's not really that bad, all things considered. And finally, water pollution. There's a bit of surface water that has kind of come up here, but there's really not a whole lot of that. Next steps, I will be building out this way, residential. I will be continuing to put more mixed use and commercial in various areas, like, you know, the intersections. And as these intersections grow, I'm probably going to be able to put, even up here, probably put a bus route that kind of covers the apartment and commercial areas, which is going to look real nice. Probably eventually put some office buildings up here as well. And then on this side, I really, like I mentioned, I want to really move my industrial to the south side of town and the southeast, and I'm going to keep shifting things over this way. In the meantime, solar is going to be the future. Keep doing water towers and whatnot. I don't really need to do a whole lot of fancy stuff because I'm near the sea on that. Healthcare, I just put a few more locations. Garbage management is something I'm really going to have to do more with in terms of either incineration or recycling, with recycling being a little more green. Education, it's going to be putting more colleges. There's more capacity for colleges, but not everyone's choosing to go, and that's been an issue for me in terms of putting spots. But university, I'm going to keep trying to get people over with capacity getting up. I want to get more people in college and universities, which also would get me a trophy once I get to that point. Police, like I mentioned, it's going to be low-income housing plus police stations. Transportation is a really interesting category because basically you start from taxis being the cheapest form of public transit, which is almost not really even a form of public transit because it doesn't strike me so much as public transit as compare like buses and trams and trains and whatnot. If this city continues to build moving forward, I will switch to building trams.
Sorry about that. It's I just lost my key. I'm sure they'll turn out. They're for the brown sedan. Oh, wait. I shouldn't have said that for your friends. Please, don't steal my car. I mean, the old horned automobile, please. Oh, good. Here they are. Well, never mind now. Thank you for listening to Second Unit.
So the
We're on the streets with keys and taking the pulse of the city. So, Karen, what's the word on the street? Tell us what you mean.
It's more what I'm smelling, Brenda. I have to say, it just plain stinks around here. Gross. And these concerned citizens agree.
That's hardly news. There hasn't been any trash collection for who knows how long. There's rotten food, dirty diapers, disgusting. Oh, God, I can't stand it. I got out of my lungs. Smell it. And the piles of filth just keep growing, 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 and growing.
You heard it here, folks. We're not doing. It's still pretty stinky, though. That's good to hear, Karen. We'll be back after that.
So in terms of post office, I'll probably put another post office here. That'd be something I do. Parks and Rec, it's interesting because Parks and Recreation, there's some attractiveness to building small, large parks and whatnot. They have some benefit, including, as you get up to large sports parks, 25 attractiveness. Tourist attractions is certainly something I would want to build up towards. And certainly landmarks, because that's going to bring tourists. So that my focus probably is going to be trying to bring tourists into the city. And really, that's the gist of it. I mean, in terms of the land area, you're really trying to build up to the north side at this point when you're at this stage in the game. You can build a little bit on the islands, but there's just less room at that point. So I would want to build north towards these mountains and figure out what I want to do with the lumber, essentially. But that's basically what I would do on Barrier Island. For anyone who is trying to build up a city, I think this is a pretty decent way to do it because in terms of money, I was able to do a pretty good job of really bringing the number up. I did so by not overbuilding until I really had the need to build. So my electricity, wasn't, I just got it up to 387 but I was more like here. You generally want to be in this kind of range where it's kind of a light green, ideally. You don't want to get it down to red, obviously, or even the orange, but you don't want to go too much over, and ideally you want to export as much as you can if you are over for a little bit. But see, as you can kind of see, I really strive to be in that light green area. Garbage didn't quite make it there, but I try to be kind of in that vicinity for a lot of things. And I think it goes really well when you do that. Eventually I'm going to build up towards trams. Trains, I would probably want to connect eventually to the outside connection up north. The weakness of this particular map is the railway connection is way all the way up here, and you start all the way down here, so it just takes a little while to build up there, and so you can't make that connection easily on this map. But otherwise, it's a good map. There's a lot of flat land. It's really neat to build on an island to start. It kind of reminds me of a trip to New York City when I was in Manhattan, and just being able to walk in, and it has that feel to it, which I think is a really cool thing with this map. But I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks for watching. Go build the best city you can build. Thanks.